Hello everyone. Today's talk is titled Song of the Sage. And what that really means is that when we look at the life of a man who has found his spiritual eyes, we see that existential wisdom has become the most valuable thing. Existential wisdom means you getting more awareness of what is existing beyond what the limitations of the senses suggest now. And so the Song of the Sage simply suggests how their wisdom comes from a very internal sense of being, where it's as if they have learned that the untouched moment is the clarity. And so the Song of the Sage is his longing. It's his longing to reunite with his greater sense of collective consciousness. And the reason these words are used, because the concept of collectivity is very important. You need to see that there exists many things in many ways. In India, there is the term sadhu. And so this is a man who is seeking that reunion, existential reunion. A sadhu is something where it's kind of like, how would I suggest it? In the way that Mr.Within sees it, it's a human being who is becoming sensitive to what is existing to a degree that he's observing his holographic reality change in a sense of self-communication, as if you were there all along, as if your awareness was never misplaced. Because the suggestion of the difference between a dream and an awakening is a total change in reality. So if we're realizing that this life's a dream and we're trying to figure if this life is a dream or not, let's say we were just the first human beings to just get this idea. Is life a dream? Oh, we don't know. And so let's say if we were to observe it, we would see reality, because of our uncertainty, because of our awareness of the vast unknown, is kept a dream because we are not awakened. We feel we have not realized this, and so there's an inaccuracy. There is a sense of dissolution. Let us recognize that we as human beings do not want to follow obsessions to a point that we cannot recognize who we are. Every time you get that moment where it's as if like others are telling you, remember who you are, or look at what you've become, or there's that kind of scenario where some mirror is talking to you, it's very important to see that that mirror is all of life. There has been some intention for your existence and for the uniqueness of how you look and how you think and how you're aware of things. You are a moment of being. And so this is no little thing. You are a moment of being. You're a human being. They've totally figured out what the human is, but what is this being? What is existence? And so this is perhaps the only question all thoughts will, in a sense, run towards, but will never reach. You will see that it's as if some of our questions are placed in very multidimensional settings. For example, the question that inspired the understanding of gravity in Newton's mind, how was that unique design placed? When you see that depth is giving you more of the details, it's as if you're going to a party and you're not realizing that you're there, you know. It's very important to see that regardless of the story you have, right now as you're hearing this, you are a moment of existence, a moment of being. Now, as a moment of being, you may then tune into, you will see, if you just simply stand for, let's say, a minute and just be alive, you would suddenly see it's as if thoughts have faded. But the minute you try to think where they come back. So it's a relationship that is self-reflective in how we are perceiving the world. If we were to see where time comes from, if time was a being that stood and we were like, what are you? Do you know? We would see that we're always in it. So we will never be able to receive the answer to some deep questions that we have because of a limitation that we are considering, because that consideration is keeping the person who's asking the question. You know, it's like we're forgetting where our questions are coming from, and it's a circle. It's cyclical. What that means is, as consciousness, if there's an association in you to form, you will see that it's as if the cycle has taken you for a ride. Life is a ride when you're not sensitive to how the cyclical movements are not you. And that's a very crazy concept, because it's very hard to get our heads around that. But if we become aware of it in our own way, where we're exploring imagination, not just as some idea we're putting away because we're so sure we're objects, but just the fact that it is our gate to recognizing our more untouched intelligence. What that means is, if all our life since we were born we've been trying to keep things in order, how does the chaos look like? What is the whole system rather than an individual segment? What is your whole being rather than just a human being? We need to, in a sense, recognize that there's been the concept of a mystic rebel, right? And a mystic rebel is a being who's going for self-transformation, not trying to transform things externally. It's as if you are internally rebelling against yourself because all the ideology and people around you have been calling you incapable. Do you know what that feels like? It feels as if your mind is harassed, your consciousness is harassed into a focus of a certain individuality because it thinks it needs that individuality to survive. You walk in your collective knowing in ways where you are never able to understand in the way that you walk in the park, for example. You are experiencing a very vast multitude of being. And so it's like if every feather on that eagle's wings had eyes, what would be the vision of the movement of sight as one ascends and descends? It's a very complex thing, but the reason you can handle it complexly is because we are not touching the complex. It's as if I bring a simple idea and the complexity is just how everyone else connects to it. Do you recognize? Because once through our realizations, are found, you will see that it is only accurate if you found nothing. Because you will not be certain in individual form to convince yourself or to see that if it's true. You see? What that means is it's that whole ideology that if, for example, Jesus came back, the Christ came back, would you would you recognize him if he told you he was the Christ? Or would you think he's some guy who's, on drugs? It's very important for you to see that you must acknowledge people more than they're acknowledging themselves. Because then that's how you will understand what they are. That's how you will. When they told you to listen, they forgot to tell you there's a whole world within movement. If you listen to where sound is coming from, you will see both the receiver is changing multidimensionally, infinitely, like in a very, how would I say it? If infinity signs were propellers on a plane of existence, you'd see that it'd be as if that movement would not make you able to see infinity, but you're always infinite, because that is how the plane is moving. And so that is how reality is manifest in a very playful way. Guys, it's very simply the matter that the song of the sage is the awareness of the human being to the flow of how it knows what it's here to do. Look at how the mind is. Let's say our thoughts are the effect of some deeper cause that we are not aware of and that we can't see with senses. Now, if we say that our mind, we are an effect of something, because we see that this reality is in cause and effect, right? So if we are the effect of something, how can the effect know the cause? And this is the most important thing, because that is the study of humanity based on how science has enclosed it. So when the effect tries to understand the cause, it will see that it's as if through its self-remembrance, it is going back to constantly knowing how it began, how things began. You will know yourself as a being when you do meditation, as a being, not just as a human idea. The idea is unreal to you. That's why sometimes you forget, certain things. If you're one of those people who's just like, oh, I'm trying to be compassionate, trying to be a good person, but you have not understood, and you have not received a vision of a good world, you cannot be present in a good world. It's as if you're lying to yourself, because it is not real for you. What that means is if I haven't ate ice cream and it's not real for me, if I'm just telling myself, oh, I've ate ice cream, I've definitely ate ice cream. I know I have ate ice cream. Do you know why? Because I saw a cone in my hand the other day. Do you know? Like, no, if I have not ate ice cream, my experience is not real. And so I am creating with my ability as a creator my own illusion. Because I'm assuming I know it. Direct experience must never be substituted for anything else. Because anything else is in a realm of duality. So you will see that direct experience is the only moment where you stop thinking, you forget all of man's philosophy. And it's as if like you're that balloon who's let go and it's just going and going and even passes that bird and it's just going up. It's going up. And suddenly, as the pressure of all existence intensifies, you burst to see that you were always the air moving yourself within yourself. Guys, we need to develop fractal minds and people who can take metaphors and open worlds out of them. We need this because in external reality, there is too much external control. What that means is, because you're a multidimensional being, you must actually internally recognize your presence and then externally let things happen. So what that means is, for example, the Taoists viewed action through inaction. However, you see that you must acknowledge yourself internally as a presence that is here. You are like the ray of the sun. And so the ray of the sun is not, in a sense, from the earth, but it is giving itself to the earth. So there are points where there are deities who are giving themselves to individuals who are, in a sense, being those deities. And so similarly, you see that it's as when presence becomes aware, it's like you're looking at your room so much that you begin seeing details. Oh my God, there's dust there. How did dust get there? Oh my God, it's from all these textbooks. In other words, there is no other words. Direct experience is it. That is the song of the sage. The sage is a being. If he allows himself as consciousness to realize itself, then it gets an extraterrestrial quality. Guys, you must realize the concept of extraterrestrial is a multidimensional thing, in the sense that internally, there is no such thing as an extraterrestrial. But externally, there is an agreement. So it's as if you are a very advanced projector that is also projecting a hollow shape, which is assuming to be real. It's as if our eyes were projectors and we're looking at these projectors. Let's say it like this. If we had a projector on our head and this projector was putting, like, let's say, something on a wall in front of us, we'd see that our eyes have an awareness of the wall. Like, we know that we're alive, but it's as if the projection is ridiculous. And so we look at our own head and we're like, oh my God, if you only think like the mechanical thing assumed on top of our head, in our head, as our head, we would see that we are limiting it. And so if you turn off the projector, you will just see the wall, and the wall is just pitch black. But it's not pitch black because there's something there. So it's a shining form of darkness. And this term is a new term that I've heard, because The shining darkness is a very profound concept. It's simply saying how the order is looking at its chaotic self and just seeing how in that darkness abyss of no meaning, there's just one thin layer of meaning before dissolution. It's like the event horizon of your internal reality. So it's very important to turn off that projector and have our direct experience guide us, but then turn on that projector, because there's a reason that projector's on our head. Because we put it there, and when I say we put it there, sometimes you begin a project with a very great vision and intention, but suddenly you see the steps to take it because it's not built. Suddenly the vision has to scale down to what is real, for example, you know? So you gotta like learn to walk before you run or something. So consciousness needs to see itself through clarity. Clarity, if you see that you're constantly comparing things, will only be emptiness. So emptiness means actually you should not have the concept of do or think about do or just use the word thinking. You should be present as the existence that you are, as the consciousness that you are, and then become aware of thought, aware of idea. That is the healthy way to use it. That is where mankind is like, oh God, it's like mankind has a very good tool, but he's not using it well, you know? And because he's not using it well, he's breaking some stuff and wondering, gosh, why life is so cruel. It's because the collective intention is letting its individuality understand itself as a collective. You are understanding yourself more. Think about it. You were a child before you had consciousness, let's say self-awareness or something in regards to an external form. Let's say before you could recognize you're some being in a mirror, you were not conscious of, for example, the families you belonged to. You were not conscious of the nation you were in. You were not conscious of the planet you were in. You were not conscious of the cosmos you were present in, because you came as an individuality. So guys, think about how fascinating it is, how much the human being is loved by existence, because it is its most individual design. It's that sense where it's as if we have tried to touch, let's say, or pick up that ruby from the lake, and our whole arm's gone in it, and suddenly when we catch it, we recognize, wow, it was well worth it. So we need to recognize everything's well worth it through our experience. Now, I want to, for a little bit, talk about why I brought up the concept of sadhu. Because it's a term they give for a seeker who is seeking beyond what the reality is. So what that means is, if you're someone who's in a routine job, if you have a constant job, if you're doing the same things, if you're watching the same shows, if you like routine, you will see that it's fine, but it dulls down your life in the sense that you feel, because you've seen this so much, you don't need to see something else. Because you're so comfortable here, you don't need to go somewhere else. But that's actually the mistake of repetition. Yeah, unconscious repetition. What that means is like they've been telling you, read this, read this, read this. And so you have not just read perhaps very limited information, like another person's voice, you know, whoever it could be, rather than your own voice as consciousness. You'd suddenly see that it's as if repetition destroys your mind, because it convinces your mind that's all it needs to do. Repetition also should not be something where we just try to imbalance ourselves by saying, oh, we should get rid of repetition, and you're looking for new things all the time. You must observe your being, and then the inspiration to move will come. You will see before you even know where you're going, your feet are moving. And so that is where the sadhu's road has begun, because his intuition, those synchronicities, those alignments intensify by showing the being where his greatest experience lies. So what that means is that I want to share with you that you think your life is your life, but you see that you are aware of your life as an awareness, as an observer observing the object of observance. This awareness is transcendent. If you choose not to believe it's transcendent, there's no problem. It's as if multidimensionality will not be actualized in any way, because you're taking no attempt towards it, you know? Unless nature suddenly reminds you in some way. Visualize yourself renouncing things, not externally, but internally. As if sit down on that park and wonder, if everything got taken away from me right now, what would be here? Including your ideology as well. Think about it in such a novel moment. And that's when I really enjoy it, because I very playfully call it emptying the Zen Master's cup. That's when, through a very graceful and compassionate knowing, you are flowing, and your communication is the most accurate because it's flowing with the intention of your greater intelligence, your greater sense of self, which does not have an other because it is originating all that is. Pay attention to your life, and if you realize how naturally your heart has its own rhythm, your attention will align itself also if you allow it. So if you go sit down and you have no instructions, no meditation techniques, but you sit down and you simply just be aware of what is alive, you would suddenly fall into these flows where you would naturally align yourself. Your intuition would amplify in the sense that you're aware of your expression as a being. You're more aware of it as a being. And it's very important, because there have been times, for example, I've sat down by a stream. Or let's say like this, actually. A very experience I had a couple of years ago was that before even meditation was real, I just bought a meditation book, a Tibetan meditation book. And I went and sat by a stream. And I sat there and I just read parts of this, and it just felt mechanical. It's as if it told me, it was telling me, and then I noticed it was mechanical because only the writer could convey so much through words. So I was aware of it, and so as I sat there, my breathing became calm. I only kept the word Om. I used that word as a tool, and I just sat down, became aware of my being, and said Om. And as I did, I began suddenly being aware of where sound is coming to existence. And so as I looked at how sound was projecting out of my mouth, but it wasn't a mouth, because my awareness wasn't a body only. It's as if I wasn't just body, I was the space around it too. And as I was aware of my presence and I said words, I'd recognize the ability of observance in an infinite field. It's as if like that quantum theory also applies to how in certain realms of us imagining things and receiving how our imagination is in a sense coming into our conscious, we become creators of abstract design. What that means is you see that your mind has the ability to, for example, visualize a triangle in front of you and spin that so there is no longer illusion. And guys, it was a very profound experience, because by doing so, in that moment, I shifted how things were real for me in confronting an aspect of my experience. So what that means is, if you are right now a person who is interested into exploring your unknown and just learning more about what you are as a self, right? And how that is transcendent in many ways, you don't need to suddenly go to India. You just need to look at, for example, your table. Let's say if your table in your room is messy, and just make that your world and learn from the forms and how you have behaved. So some days, when I don't want to say forget myself, but when I see that for some time I've been enjoying something, I slow things down a bit. When I see I've been enjoying something for a bit too long, I slow down. And for example, I looked at my table and I looked at how I had kept my environment, and I learned from it instantly that there was something wrong. There was something that didn't make sense, for example. And guys, this was a certain period. in my life where it just dawned on me that the same complexity that we as a mind are trying to confront in, for example, our theories on the cosmos, can be the same complexity in how I perceive my table and all the stuff in it and how everything was placed and all the books and, whatnot. And I just saw the design, for example, how a pencil is thrown and it's elevated in a certain degree, and how certain shapes look like, for example, a tribe. Certain objects look like a tribe together, for example, an eraser and a crystal and a stone or something, And it was just a very, very interesting awareness where I recognized that we must just work on ourselves in increasing our observance of life. And in doing so, we will put ourselves in a state of mind where we will tune in and receive the proper expression of the moment, because we're allowing the moment to happen. And so this is where your intuition is no longer an inner voice, but it has become an actuality. It's that concept where they said they were certain beings that were avatars. They became an emanation of such clarity. It's as if they had recognized who they are, and in an instant it had transformed. Geometry was no longer cage, but all revelation, and that which leads to all revelation. Similar to how ideas lead to other ideas, we can see that the best way for man, as Mr. Within is suggesting right now, the best way for the pilots of consciousness to begin, first of all, in a very external way, understanding how to work with our imagination and our sense of multidimensionality without the dependence of substances, requires a sense of self-learning. You got to begin learning from yourself. You can't not be aware of yourself. Throughout your day, you got to walk wherever it is. Just be aware that you're present. Just be aware of your body. Be aware of your eyes. Be aware of your smell. Do these in isolation if you're bothered. If not, and you might be someone who's able, as you go walk in a park and see what you see. Look at the complex designs. And then see that by constantly observing in a very meditative way, as meditation suggests, in a very deep self-contemplative way, you will suddenly re-observe how your thought is being present. And so you will observe existence constantly and be aware of it. And you will see memory only is a problem for the external being if he's not aware of his internal dimensions. If you're aware of it, you will not just get more than memory, you will get activation and certain projections of reality where it's as if, for example, your greater self is understanding, all right, now this limited version of me can handle more. And so I'm talking about it here very playfully. These are not individual experiences. These are very collective senses of knowing. It's as if you being not a being that is made of light, but you just being light and just being in whatever infinite ways that you can. So the sun is called the sun to us. For itself, it is just pure expression, and so the clarity of man is found in its pure expression. That is the beauty of the song of the sage. And so once you begin getting interested in your internal experience, you will suddenly become really calm. You'll suddenly realize, okay, I don't need to do all this external work. I just need to tune down my life a little bit. Just instead of pressing on the gas pedal constantly 24/7, I'm just going to stop the car and get out of this vehicle of thought and routine ideology that I've constantly been satisfying myself temporally with, and just be aware of what is here. You will see the minute you are aware of your presence, it is beyond your personality. And so you would become curious, for example, in certain mystical views. And for example, suddenly when I read this, the Upanishads became extremely interesting for me. Ancient books became extremely interesting for me because they were teaching where man went. They were reference points that man could use to, in a sense, have his mind advance into greater potentiality. This reality is moving in a certain way. Internally, you are a free bird. You're not in a cage. You can, in a sense, fly off, and don't think that there is anything like death. It's called transition, because you will see that it's as if on the edge of where you thought death was nothing, you'll see it's like if there is no end to the tunnel. There's never an end to the tunnel of experience. You are constantly experiencing through different senses of association if you choose to have an individual point of conception. But in a sense, at that point, you just be that drop that is no longer individual, it's like you've flown into the river, and so the direction of the river, it's as if you are no longer choosing where to go, but in a sense, you as you know your collective as you have, because you're an individual, you will see that you will flow into a greater knowing. It's as if you'll suddenly realize, okay, I didn't need to worry about the speck of dust that was, for example, this whole external reality on my shoulder, because me as a being, I'm a much more greater sense of multitude and infinity. You know, we're multidimensional beings, and this is actuality in your internal experience. In your external experience, it can become an actuality, and right now the world needs pilots of consciousness to navigate toward a greater understanding of the planes of existence. And so may the song of the sage always be heard. Much blessings, and namaste.